Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric, a series where I talk about the crime dramas that I like that I'm currently watching. In this episode, we're going to talk about the latest episode of The Blacklist, Elementary, as well as Second Chance. First, let's start with The Blacklist, where we have today's blacklister being the caretaker, a man who holds secrets ranging from powerful people to governments, governments entirely, as well as the individual government officials. Normally, these secrets are kept, but in the beginning of this episode, we have it revealed that the secrets that he is keeping are slowly being leaked out, and these secrets need to be stopped before it leads to which these secrets leaking out could lead to international issues and many things. It's also very interesting when you find out, well, interesting and creepy when you find out where he keeps these secrets. They're inside inside of people's bodies, specifically dead bodies buried in a cemetery. Does he? Well, he is a caretaker, so it's like, is he the kind of the caretaker of that cemetery? I mean, I'm assuming so. I guess it's kind of, he eventually says that basically being the caretaker is like a family generation thing. His father did it, and his father's father did it. So I'm guessing they own the cemetery, and so their day job is, burying bodies, but it's like actually they also bury secrets with those bodies. So, you end up finding out the reason why he's releasing these secrets. It's not like there's a problem with his system. In his words, the system's perfect. Even Reddington was like the system has always been perfect, but there's been a problem with it, and there's some wrench in the cogs of this whole system. And basically, we find out that the reason why he's been releasing them is because his daughter had been kidnapped. But then later on, you find out, nope, his daughter wasn't kidnapped per se. She kidnapped herself because she found out that she was taken when she was a little girl. Even one of the soldiers that helped her during this whole kidnapping is actually her biological brother from her original her birth family. Apparently, the caretaker took her when she was a little girl. Basically, her dad was being abusive towards her, yelling at her, and the caretaker and his wife had previously tried, and sadly, having children wasn't, in their stars. They ended up losing, like, the most recent attempt at having a child. And basically, he ended up getting into an argument with her dad, ended up killing him. And she took his hand, and so he just took her home with him. And he's been raising her as his daughter ever since. But this whole thing happened because she found out the truth that, like, oh, you're not even my biological father. You took me away from my family. Because in the end, her only surviving relative was her brother. So it's not like she has other family members to know. And you have Harold pointing out his system of secrets. All these secrets he's kept was broken by his secret. Her. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then we have I'm gonna say this standout moment for me was the whole situation where Wrestler's trying to disarm the bomb. There's like 30 seconds left on the clock, and he's like, "But first, apologize to Navi." He's like, "What? Apologize? You called her a bitch." Wrestler's like, "I didn't call her a bitch." She's like, "Yeah, you call me a bitch," because it was like he was playing into the role. He was like, you," because earlier they were trying to stop these German terrorists, and to do it, they pretended like their car was breaking down, and they were they were a couple mad at each other, kind of to get them distracted. And he's like, "Well, you play a bitch well." And Wrestler was like, all right, I apologize. And then her aunt was like, "Okay, you cut this certain wires." And then at the end of it, Navi's like, "Okay, I accept her apology." And Wrestler's kind of like, "Really?" Even though I have to be like, "Really?" In this situation, that's a little petty, Haran, but I won't lie, it kind of made me laugh in a way. Am I twisted for laughing at that? It's just, it was weird. Another part of this episode, we have Liz accepting Tom's proposal. Obviously, last episode they talked about keeping a baby, but now she's like, "Yeah, Tom, we're going to get married," which Reddington isn't all that thrilled about, the latter part. And we also have Tom going to that Lady Gina, one that he recently met up with again, the one that tried to kill him about, what, 2 or 3 episodes ago. specifically, he goes to her because he wants peace talk. He wants to have a peace talk. Granted, the peace talk doesn't go so well at first. They kind of a little bit of a scuffle, but things settle down. He's like, I don't want to live in this world anymore. Basically, he wants to leave it behind because he wants things to be right between him and Liz. So he wants to leave this life behind. She leaves him alone. She promises not to come after him, and he won't come after her. They just settle it. He's like, or I could just put a bullet in you right now, or I can go track down the Major, and because I know exactly where he is, and put a bullet in him. But nearing the end of the episode, we find out that apparently she is working for someone, because she talks to someone on the phone and like, he came here just like you said. How do you want me to handle it? Personally, I'm thinking she might be talking to the Major. Because obviously the Major is still pissed at Tom for Tom basically selling him out to those dudes. Wasn't it like earlier this season? Wasn't that happened? For some reason in my mind I'm thinking like that was season 2. Maybe that was, but I'm pretty sure that was earlier this season, wasn't it? Maybe that, I don't remember. Yeah, it definitely was earlier this season. I don't know why I'm thinking like that. But it could turn out to be someone else. So I'm curious to find out who it was that she was talking on the phone. And then we have another part of this episode is the fact is Liz is a little upset. She's sad because she actually wants her, she's, getting married to Tom. She was talking to Harold about it. Like, but, telling him that she's happy about it. Because he's like, you deserve to be happy after everything, that's happened between y'all. It's a good thing for y'all to get back to a good place. But, she kind of wants her, she wished that she could have her mom there with her. And Tom convinces her, Harold tells her, like, don't you have any leads on your mom? She's like, there was one guy, but, he seemed like he knew more than he let on. And Harold's like, well, then you have to do right by yourself and find out exactly what he knows. So Liz visits that guy, which apparently Reddington has, I guess his caretaker, the woman looking after him, is actually under his payroll because she calls him after Liz visits. Because all he did was give her a letter saying like, oh, give this to my daughter because me and my daughter are kind of have bad, we're not on good terms. And so Reddington's like, she's like, they didn't do anything but talk about his daughter. And Reddington's like, okay. Turns out when Liz goes give the letter to the daughter, that the daughter and the dad are actually on good terms. The letter was meant for her. She reads it, and it reveals that Liz's mom isn't dead. She's actually quite alive, and that possibly someone who might be that person that has been looking for her is in fact possibly her mom. And she's like, why didn't you tell me this? That, why have you kept this from me? Because you told me that, my mom committed suicide. And Reddington's like, no, she definitely did because she walked into the water never to be seen again. And she's like, I don't know if you're right. Because earlier in the episode, Reddington was basically saying that there's some things that can never be forgiven. And Liz was kind of like, no, there are things can be forgiven. But she was like, maybe you're right, Red. Maybe there are some things that can't be forgiven, and this is one of them, and she walks away. What is Red hiding from her, Like, what is so bad that he can't tell her? What's so bad about her mom being alive and looking for her? That's so bad. We even had the very end of the episode where we have Reddington. He took the caretaker's ledger where he which tells you specifically what secrets are hidden in what specific body and whatever. And he digs up apparently what's one of his secrets, and it's something related to Liz. Then Bae tells him, it's like, you have to tell her. Whether you want to or not, it doesn't matter to Reddington. The universe kind of wants her to know, and she'll find out whether you want her to or not. Reddington still kind of doesn't listen to Dempsey and burns what little envelope or letter or whatever it is that whatever that secret was like, what was it that he burned? What was, because whatever it was, he was like, he said that if anything happened to him, if he died or something like that, that letter was supposed to, whatever that letter says, was supposed to get to Elizabeth. So But now things have kind of changed now that she knows that her mom's still alive. So what was in that damn letter? I hopefully we get those answers soon enough. This will be the last episode for a little while because the Blacklist is taking a break and won't be returning until April 7th. And now moving on to the latest episode of Elementary. In this week's case, we have a possible gang war happening. Members of a local triad gang, specifically 3 of them, were killed. In the beginnings, it seems like it might have been a double cross. But apparently there won't, which was going to lead to possibly a war between these 2 rival gangs. But there won't be a war because apparently the assailant was a white guy dressed as an old woman. Old lady specifically, because he created this very realistic mask and fooled. He created 3 specific masks, but the mask he used in this particular part of the entire case was the fact he disguised himself as an older lady. Specifically, he used the face of an older lady who has ties to the triad. Apparently, back in the day, her husband was a triad member, so she's kind of a lady that I guess in that community they kind of know who she is and they kind of look out for her. And these guys thought that she was her, but it ended up being this dude in disguise because he apparently makes some pretty realistic masks that ends up fooling a lot of people. He even ended up faking like a seizure to get them to drop their guard and ended up killing them that way. But when when it is revealed who the guy is, he actually seems very proud of what he did. He even goes into detail about everything he did, like kind of goes blow by blow, but he won't tell them why he did what he did. But it turns out that he was attacked at his job because he noticed something with a dead body at his morgue. It was part of like that. What's the word for that place? It's kind of like a help center. It's not a retirement home, but it's kind of like a help center for older people in the community. Basically, the guy running that place was basically getting them to donate to charities because the whole thing was a scam. He basically had them donate to charities, which the 3 dead members of the 3 dead triad members were basically those charities were fakes that were basically connected to their bank accounts. So they took the money. They had these people who were kind of rich donate to these charities, and then they killed them by making them overdose on muscle relaxers. And basically, they attacked the guy at the morgue who ended up noticing this, and he kind of brought attention to this. So the guy that heads the help center sent them to kind of teach him a lesson. Basically, this whole thing was that guy getting revenge on what they for what they did. He even disguised himself as the head of, what's the name, the Snake Eye Boys, that specific triad gang, like the leader. He disguised himself as him and went to the guy who leads the help center because he wanted to basically get all the money transferred into an account of his by disguising himself as the leader, the head of the Snake Eye Boys. And basically the whole thing was he wanted revenge and he wanted to make sure that his family got paid, had enough money to look after themselves when he died because he apparently is sick. A big part of this episode is also Sherlock and Joan looking into the attempt on Moreland's life. They look into the possibility that Moreland's girlfriend, Sabine, might have been kind of an inside man as to reason why they knew exactly where Moreland would be when they attempted to take his life. Moreland doesn't believe it. He tells Sherlock, "No, you're wrong about her." And it turns out, yeah, he was right. She wasn't involved. Basically, she had said in an email where they would be going, and her email was being watched. Sherlock was able to track down the gunner, but the mastermind behind the attempt on Moreland's life is still a mystery. And because of Moreland's belief in Sabine, he ends up slipping out that he cared for her. She was very important to him, that he even loves her, which pisses Sherlock off. It annoys him because of how much he cared about her, but doesn't care, doesn't share the same feelings towards Sherlock's mom. Which in this episode, Sherlock opens up to Joan and tells her about his mom. That basically Moreland divorced her, kicked her out. Moreland got full custody of the kid, of Sherlock and his brother. She was left with minimum money. She got some visiting rights. Hardly had a home, because even the home that she had ended up burning down because of one of her neighbors' heater ended up exploding. So that in her apartment building basically burnt down. She had it rough, and Sherlock basically held him responsible at the time, and still does. Can't blame him though. I would too. Just because it's like, man, your dad was a real piece of crap. I mean, because his time with his dad, you see the way him and his dad talk to each other. You even see the way he talks to Sherlock, and it's like, I get why Sherlock doesn't like you. I mean, it's like, I don't know. I mean, it takes a turn when you find out when Moreland later reveals to Sherlock the reason why his mother was in the situation she was in, the reason why he left her and all that, is because she was an addict too. Something him and his mom have in common. It was almost out of spite towards Sherlock that Moreland reveals this, because he was tired of Sherlock blaming him for their mom. She wanted to try and kick the addiction herself. She didn't want to get professional help. She wanted to kind of kick it herself, which may have been a contributing factor in why she died. Jones said Sherlock's mentioned that she had died, but I don't think it really went into details about how she died, what were the causes for it. But nevertheless, like I said, it seemed like he told Sherlock this out of spite, and it's almost like, I want you to apologize. It's time for you to grow up. You're up here still blaming me for what happened with your mom. But even this revelation doesn't change how Sherlock feels towards his father. Because it doesn't it's not enough to make up for the mistakes he has made. He can I don't know. Personally, I don't think I'd be able to forgive him either. Just even when he tries to turn things around with Sherlock, it seems like he ends up fucking up and making Sherlock hate him even more. You see his attempts to try and close that, gap between him and his son, but it just seems like the more he tries, kind of the worse he makes it. So. And now moving on to Second Chance, we have Alexa, Mary's assistant, working with that dude Connor, the person Mary was going to potentially form a merger with, in case she died, which we know last episode she backed out of the merger because she realized she had more time on her hands. The clock wasn't ticking down as fast for her. And basically, Alexa is told to steal some work from Otto, because there is something that this whole thing working with Connor is not just for him, it's also for her to get what she wants. And what that something is that she wants, we don't know. But at the beginning of the episode, we have her helping Jimmy out, because Jimmy basically was out playing and got drunk, and she helped him to his room. But while she was helping him to his room, she also took a look around the Mary's place and found the tank area where she saw she even came across some of Jimmy's data about, coming back looking younger. Granted, I don't know how much of that she actually looked into. It does seem that she did take some of the data with her on a flash drive, but it's not really clear how much of the whole Jimmy situation she knows. But we'll come back to that a little bit more later on in the episode. We find out that Jimmy's daughter, Helen, has a new man in her life, a boyfriend from high school, which we find out that Jimmy wasn't always the nicest towards her boyfriends back in the day. Even more so now, he is very suspicious of this new boyfriend. And it turns out his suspicions are right, because he is currently working with a group. of ex-convicts. Basically, he's a parole officer, and he's been signing one of his parolees' cards saying like, "Oh yeah, he's been with me the entire time," when he actually hasn't. Duvall and Jimmy end up breaking this whole news to Helen that her new boyfriend's actually a bad guy, and and it kind of hurts Helen. She's like, she thinks about it. She says like, after this particular boyfriend in the past, like her and that particular boyfriend kind of split up, and because he was kind of a troublemaker. What was his name again? Wally. Because in my mind I couldn't think of his name, because all I could think was like, oh yeah, he was played by Breckin Meyer. That's the only thing that came to mind. But sorry, really apologize for that. Anyway, Wally had was kind of a troublemaker back then, and Jimmy called Helen an idiot for not seeing him for who he was, and she's like, maybe Dad was right. I am an idiot, because it's like Dad was right back then. He'd be right about him now as well. Also in the episode, we find out that this particular day is the anniversary of Otto and Mary's parents' death. Otto doesn't actually talk to anyone on this day. He actually blames himself. His father was distracted by him, because Otto was talking, and his dad was upset. I was like, yeah, he keeps going and going. Just Otto stopped, but while he was distracted, they were in a car accident. Which later on in the episode, we find out that basically what he does, I think, on these anniversaries is he sits in quiet. He doesn't talk to anyone, and he replays the whole day over and over again. And we have Mary kind of telling him, kind of pulling him back, because Jimmy needs him for this case. I'm probably going to go back. I'm just going to probably call him Pritchard from now on. I don't know. Usually you always see him by Pritchard, not Jimmy. I don't know. But I'm probably going to end up going back and forth between the two. But Jimmy needs him to help with this case. And at one point, Mary kind of pulls him back to tell him it's not your fault. Like, what happened to our parents, them dying, that wasn't your fault. You don't need to blame yourself for it. Which is kind of like, it's always very sweet when you see that relationship. Just how caring she is for her brother. I mean, he is like, Mary's the only person that Otto has, and I guess like she really lives up to it, I guess is how I want to phrase that. It's just because she's always there for him, and it's sweet, because we even have at the end of the episode where Otto was asked her later on, like, did you mean what you said back then? And basically what Mary said was, well, Otto had asked her back then, will you be leaving me too, like Mom and Dad? And she's like, I will never leave you. And then Mary in present day was like, yeah, I meant it back then, and I mean it now. I will never leave you, Otto. And so it's like, kind of gets you a little weepy-eyed. But anyway, in this, we find out that basically the reason why Wally is working with these guys is because they put the money in his account. And he felt, because he's kind of a spineless dude, he went along with it, because he felt like if he tried to explain it to anyone that, like, no, they just planted the money in my account, I didn't do anything, that no one would believe him. So he's like, the guys told me, like, I might as well go along with it, because if I don't, no one's going to believe me. And that's how he figured it. That was going to be the case. Duvall wants to take him in, because he's like, well, we got to go through proper channels to get this taken care of. But feeling a little bad for him, Jimmy suggests, like, why don't we just use him? Rather than getting the FBI involved, why don't we just use him as a means of catching these guys? And during all that, we have him kind of reflecting on who he was as a father. He even asked Duvall, did I actually call her an idiot? He was like, yeah. Did I ever call you an idiot? And Duvall was like, well, yeah, but I knew it meant you love me. He's like, really? He's like, no. It's like, he's almost like, I can't handle this, like, new you, because a lot of things have been put in perspective for Jimmy, since coming back. He realizes he wasn't the best of father. Like he at that time he can justify the things he did, but now looking back, he's like, I really hurt my kids. And it's really nice to see that it's kind of interesting how coming back to life makes you really look back on how much you messed up the first time around. But anyway, we end up finding out that basically this whole thing is actually the criminal that we're seeing periodically throughout the episode, the guy in jail who's actually dying of cancer. It's actually, this whole thing was his plan. He's paying to be broken out, but breaking out not solely just for breaking out. He's also breaking out solely for the sake of revenge against the judge who locked him up. The pretty twisted thing is, like, he makes it seem like the judge is dead. Like, the judge, quote unquote, died 8 months ago, or at least that's what Duvall was saying when he was looking into this whole case. But the thing is, at some point, that guy had captured a judge and had him locked up. And basically he was like, he was basically saying, I'm going to take the last amount of my time that I have left, before this cancer kills me, and I'm going to spend it looking over you locked in a cage. Which is very twisted on his part. It's like, yeah, I'm going to watch you every day until at the very last moment when they finally find me dead, and then I'm gonna leave you enough food that you can survive the 8 months or so I have left to live, and I'm just gonna watch you. Super, super creepy. I guess it's like payback. It's like, you have the nerve to lock me up in a jail, so I'm gonna lock you up in one, and I'm gonna watch you every day as you wither away, type of thing. I don't know. And at the very end, we have Jimmy talking to his daughter. I mean, he's like, your dad loved you, obviously, because she still doesn't know. Your dad, he may not have been able to express it well, but he loved you, and you're that type of person who always sees the best in people. She's like, yeah, I even saw the best in my dad, even when he didn't see it. And then at the moment, Jimmy's about to say, the truth is, the reason why you always feel like you know me is, but Duvall shows up and he doesn't tell her. It makes me, it'd be kind of interesting to see what would happen if his daughter did find out about him, as well as his granddaughter. I'm about to say niece. His granddaughter found out, I mean, we see Duvall somewhat knowing the truth. So how would they handle it? And then at the very end of it, we find out that Alexa, who had previously mentioned the fact is that she felt guilty about betraying Mary, but she didn't feel any betrayal towards Otto, because it seems like she actually has a grudge against Otto. But in the end, we find out that possibly, we know what that grudge is possibly for. The person we've seen, the older gentleman that she's typically with and talking to, I was on the assumption that was her father, and I think that's how they kind of wanted it pointed out. But it turns out that person is actually her husband. She's actually way older than she actually is. It appears that she may have been a part of an experiment very similar to Jimmy, so that she came back as probably a better version of herself. Maybe she was part of an earlier version of what eventually Jimmy went through, coming back as a better version of himself. So I don't know. I hope we get next episode we get even more of a look into that, find out what happened with that, because I'm pretty sure she said Connor saved her. So either maybe Connor, because obviously Connor knows about it, then this whole experiment of Otto's, and maybe because it seems she said that Otto cast her out, so maybe Otto abandoned her when he first started the experiment because it was a fail in his mind. The experiment was a fail, so maybe at some point Connor took care of her or something like that. I don't know. We'll have to see, I guess. That's about it for this episode. So until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.